Admiral Park Do-yan stood alone in the center of the great chamber. The room was massive, bigger than any building on Earth. Crystal walls rose hundreds of meters into the air, and floating platforms held representatives from 47 different species. Some had scales, some had tentacles, some looked like nothing he had ever seen before. All of them were staring at him. He was the first human to ever stand in this place. The Galactic Council had existed for over 100,000 years. They had seen empires rise and fall. They had watched stars die and new ones be born. And now, for the first time, they were looking at a human being. Park kept his face calm. His uniform was simple dark blue with silver buttons. He had no weapons. He had no guards. Earth's small delegation waited on a platform far above, too far away to help if something went wrong. But Park was not afraid. He had spent 30 years in the military. He had fought in 3 wars. He had buried friends and enemies alike. A room full of aliens did not scare him. "You may speak," said the chief counselor, a tall creature with gray skin and 4 arms. His name was Velthus, and he was the leader of the Kalahari Dominion, the most powerful species in the galaxy. Park took a breath. "Thank you, counselor. I come here today to request membership in the Galactic Council for Earth and all of humanity. We wish to join your civilization. We wish to trade, to learn, and to grow alongside you." The chamber was silent for a moment. Then the whispers began. Thousands of voices speaking in hundreds of languages. The translation device in Park's ear tried to keep up, but it was too much. He caught only pieces. Words like dangerous and primitive and threat. Velthus raised one of his 4 hands, and the chamber fell silent again. "We have studied your species," Velthus said. "We have watched you for many years. You are interesting." "Thank you," Park said. That was not a compliment. Velthus leaned forward in his seat. "In the last 500 years, your species has fought over 2,000 wars against itself. You have created weapons capable of destroying your entire planet. You breed at an alarming rate. You spread across your world like a disease, consuming everything in your path." Park's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. "You are aggressive," Velthus continued. "You are unpredictable. You adapt faster than any species we have ever seen. This makes you dangerous. Not because of what you are now, but because of what you might become." Another counselor spoke up. This one was a floating cloud of light, with a voice like wind chimes. "We have seen species like yours before. Young, ambitious, hungry, they always cause problems. They always start wars. We cannot allow that." "We are not here to start wars," Park said, keeping his voice steady. "We are here to join you, to be part of something greater than ourselves." "Perhaps," Velthos said, "but we cannot take that risk." The vote was called. Park watched as 47 species made their decision. One by one, the votes appeared on the great crystal screen behind Velthos. Red for rejection. Green for acceptance. Yellow for abstaining. Red. 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 Park counted them. 43 red. For yellow. 0 green. Not a single species had voted in favor of Earth. "The vote is complete," Velthus announced. "Earth's request for membership is denied." Park nodded slowly. He had expected this, but then Velthos spoke again, and Park felt his blood turn cold. "Furthermore, the Council invokes Article 7 of the Galactic Charter, the Containment Protocol." The chamber erupted in noise. Even some of the counselors seemed surprised. Park's translation device struggled to keep up with the chaos, but he understood enough. Article 7 was not just rejection. It was imprisonment. "Earth will be quarantined," Velthus said, his voice cutting through the noise. "No trade with outside species. No technology exchange. No contact of any kind. Any human vessel found beyond the Sol system will be destroyed without warning. This is for the safety of the galaxy." Park stood very still. His hands were clenched into fists at his sides, but his face showed nothing. He had learned long ago to never show weakness to his enemies. "You are making a mistake," he said quietly. "We are protecting ourselves." Velthus replied, "No, you are not." Park looked around the chamber, meeting as many eyes as he could. You think we are the threat? You think humans are the danger you need to guard against? But you are wrong. Is that a threat, Admiral? No. It is a warning. Park's voice was calm, but there was something in it that made even Velthus shift uncomfortably in his seat. There is something coming. Something old. Something hungry. My scientists have seen the signs. The strange radio signals from the core. The disappearing colonies on the outer rim. You have seen them too, but you ignore them because you are afraid to look. The chamber was silent now. Every eye was on Park. When it comes, Park continued, you will wish you had not pushed us away. You will wish you had made us your allies instead of your prisoners. Because when the darkness arrives, you will learn something important about humans. We know how to fight. We know how to survive. And we do not give up. Ever. Velthus stared at him for a long moment. Then he made a sound that might have been a laugh. Human arrogance, he said. This is exactly why we cannot trust your species. You stand here, alone, surrounded by the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. And you threaten us with stories of monsters in the dark. Take him away. The quarantine begins immediately. Guards move toward Park. He did not resist as they led him out of the chamber. But as he walked, he spoke one last time, loud enough for everyone to hear. Remember this day. Remember that you were warned. The great crystal doors closed behind him with a sound like thunder. 18 months later, the Devourer swarm emerged from the galactic core, and the dying began. The first colony to fall was called Bright Haven. It was a Kelhari mining world on the edge of explored space, home to 2 million people. One morning, they sent their regular supply requests to the homeworld. By evening, there was nothing left. No buildings. No ships. No people. The planet itself had been stripped down to bare rock, still glowing red from the heat. 3 more colonies fell in the first week. Then 10 more. Then 50. The Devourer swarm had returned. Every species in the galaxy knew the stories. 3 million years ago, the swarm had nearly destroyed everything. They were not a civilization. They were not even truly alive in the way most beings understood life. They were hunger given form. Billions of creatures, each one connected to a single vast mind, moving through space like a wave of death. They ate everything: metal, rock, flesh, energy. They did not stop. They did not negotiate. They simply consumed. The ancient species had fought them for 10,000 years, before finally driving them back to the galactic core. Everyone believed they were extinct. Everyone was wrong. Counselor Velthos stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched his homeworld burn. The great cities of Kelhar, built over 50,000 years of civilization, were being torn apart by creatures that looked like nightmares made real. Some were small, the size of a human hand. Some were larger than starships. All of them were hungry. We've lost contact with the southern continent, his aide reported, voice shaking. The swarm has consumed the capital. Velthus said nothing. What was there to say? In 6 weeks, the Kelhari had lost 11 worlds. His species, the most powerful in the galaxy, was being eaten alive. The council called an emergency meeting, but this time, there was no great crystal chamber. That station had been destroyed 2 days ago. Now the surviving counselors met through holographic projections, their images flickering and unstable as the galaxy's communication networks began to fail. We must combine our forces, said the counselor of the Valith Federation. A united fleet. Every ship we have. Agreed, said the cloud being who had spoken against Earth 18 months ago. Its voice was no longer musical. It sounded like static. The combined fleet will be the largest armada in galactic history. 12,000 warships. 30 species working together. It will not be enough, someone muttered. But there was no other choice. The fleet was assembled in record time. Gathering at a point called Nexus Prima, massive space station that served as the galaxy's main trading hub. If the swarm reached Nexus Prime, they would have access to the fastest travel routes in the galaxy. Nowhere would be safe. Admiral Korath of the Valith Federation took command. He was considered the greatest military mind in the galaxy. He had won 43 battles without a single defeat. He positioned his fleet in a perfect defensive formation around the station. Layers upon layers of ships creating a wall of firepower. The swarm arrived on the third day. Korath had studied every record of the ancient war. He had prepared for every scenario. He had trained his crews for months. None of it mattered. The swarm did not attack in formations. They did not use tactics. They simply came a wall of living creatures so thick that it blocked out the stars. The first wave crashed against the fleet like an ocean hitting a sandcastle. Ships began to die. The Valith dreadnoughts, each one 3 kilometers long, were torn apart in minutes. The Kelhari battlecruisers fired until their weapons melted, and still the swarm came. Smaller vessels were simply swallowed whole, crews and all. Admiral Korath ordered a retreat after 2 hours. But the swarm was faster. They surrounded the fleet, cutting off every escape route. The great admiral died when his flagship was breached by a creature the size of a small moon. His last transmission was a single word: run. No one could. The Battle of Nexus Prime lasted for hours. When it was over, 8,000 ships had been destroyed. 2 million soldiers were dead. The swarm had lost perhaps 1% of its numbers. They consumed the wreckage, grew stronger, and continued their advance. Panic spread across the galaxy, faster than light. Species that had existed for millions of years began preparing for extinction. Some tried to hide, moving their populations to remote systems far from the swarm's path. The swarm found them anyway. Some tried to surrender, sending ships full of diplomats to offer peace. The ships were eaten. The diplomats were eaten. Everything was eaten. Counselor Velthus sat in his quarters aboard the last Kelhari warship. His homeworld was gone. His people were scattered. The galaxy was dying. And all he could think about was the human admiral who had stood alone in the council chamber, warning them of exactly this. "You will wish you had not pushed us away." Velthus had laughed at him, called it human arrogance. But the human had been right. About everything, he called an emergency council session. The surviving counselors, barely 20 now, down from 47, appeared as flickering holograms. "We must ask Earth for help," Velthus said. The response was immediate outrage. "Impossible. We quarantine them. They would never help us." "We have no choice," Velthus replied. "Our combined fleet was destroyed in ours. The swarm cannot be stopped. But the humans..." He paused. "The humans have been preparing. My spies have seen their shipyards. They have been building a fleet unlike anything we have ever seen." "Why would they help us?" asked the cloud being. "We tried to imprison them." Velthus closed his eyes. "Because humans are strange creatures. They hold grudges, yes. But they also have a word in their language that does not translate well into ours. They call it mercy. Perhaps they will show us some. And if they refuse, then we die. All of us. Every species, every world, everything." Velthus opened his eyes. "I will go myself. I will beg if I have to. Pride means nothing when you are extinct." The council voted. This time, it was unanimous. 3 days later, a small diplomatic convoy crossed the quarantine line into human space. They expected to be destroyed. Instead, they found themselves surrounded by ships larger and more powerful than anything they had ever seen. And for the first time in 18 months, aliens heard the voice of a human over their communications. "Welcome to Sol System. Admiral Park has been expecting you." Counselor Velthos had seen many things in his long life. He had watched stars explode. He had walked on worlds made entirely of crystal. He had stood in the presence of beings older than most solar systems. But nothing had prepared him for what he saw when his ship entered the Sol System. The quarantine monitors had shown them an isolated, primitive world. A species barely capable of reaching their own moon. That was the Earth they expected to find. That was not the Earth they found. The shipyards came first. Massive structures of metal and light, stretching for thousands of kilometers through space. Velthus counted at least 50 of them, each one building warships at a rate that should have been impossible. The ships themselves were unlike anything in the galactic database. They were angular, aggressive, covered in weapons that made the Kelharis best look like toys. "How is this possible?" whispered one of the diplomats. "They were contained. They had no access to advanced technology." Veltha said nothing. He was beginning to understand something about humans that the Council had missed. They had seen human aggression and called it dangerous. They had seen human ambition and called it threatening. But they had failed to see the most dangerous thing of all: human determination. When humans wanted something, they did not stop until they had it. The escort ships guided them past a massive station orbiting the fourth planet. The name painted on its side read Mars Unity Station. Workers in spacesuits moved across its surface like ants, building, expanding, never stopping. 18 months, Veltha said quietly. They did all this in 18 months. The diplomatic convoy was brought to Earth itself. From orbit, the planet was beautiful blue oceans, green continents, white clouds. But even from space, Velthus could see the changes. Cities had grown larger. New structures covered areas that had been empty before. The entire planet was working together in a way the Council had never seen. They landed in a city called Sol. The streets were clean and organized. The people moved with purpose. And everywhere there were signs of preparation. Factories running day and night. Training facilities for soldiers. Research centers developing new weapons. Admiral Park Do-yan met them in a simple office building. He looked older than he had in the council chamber, more gray in his hair, deeper lines on his face. But his eyes were the same. Sharp, cold, dangerous. "Counselor Velthos," Park said. His voice was calm. "I told you we would meet again." Velthus lowered his head. It was a gesture of respect among his people, something he had never done to a lesser species before. "Admiral Park, I come to apologize, and to beg for your help." Park said nothing for a long moment. Behind him stood his aide, Captain Yoon Jasu, a young woman with dark eyes that watched the aliens with obvious suspicion. "You voted to cage us like animals," Park said finally. "You called us dangerous, primitive, a threat to the galaxy. We were wrong. You were right about some things." Park's lips curved into something that was almost a smile. "We are dangerous. We have always been dangerous. It is how we survived on a world that tried to kill us every day for millions of years. Predators, diseases, natural disasters. Earth is not a kind place. We became dangerous because we had no choice." Svelthus nodded. "And now the galaxy needs that danger." "Yes, you do." Park gestured for the aliens to sit. "Tell me everything," Velthus told him. "The fall of Nexus Prime, the destruction of the combined fleet, the billions already dead, and the trillions more who would die if nothing changed." He showed them footage of the swarm, the endless tide of creatures. The planet stripped bare, the ships torn apart like paper. Captain Yoon studied the data with intense focus. When Velthos finished, she looked up at Park. "We have been tracking the swarm since they emerged," she said. "Our scientists have studied their patterns, their biology, their weaknesses." "They have weaknesses?" Velthos asked, hope creeping into his voice. "Everything has weaknesses," Park said. "The council species fought the swarm 3 million years ago by trying to overpower them. You built bigger ships and more powerful weapons. You tried to meet force with force." He shook his head. "That was foolish." "Then how do you fight them?" Park leaned forward. "You do not try to overpower them. You outthink them. The swarm operates as a single mind, connected through something we believe is quantum entanglement. They share thoughts, commands, memories. It makes them powerful, but it also makes them predictable. When the queen gives an order, every creature follows it. There is no independence, no creativity, no adaptation in the middle of battle." Velthus's four hands clenched together. "And humans can adapt. We can do more than adapt." Park stood and walked to a window. Outside, the city of Seoul stretched to the horizon. "Counselor, when you quarantined us, you thought you were protecting the galaxy from humanity. But what you actually did was force us to prepare for war. For 18 months, every human on this planet has had one goal: to be ready for the moment when we would have to fight for our survival. You knew we would come asking for help. We knew something would happen. The universe does not let humanity rest for long. It never has. Park turned back to face him. We have built a fleet of 3,000 ships. Not as many as your combined fleet. But every one of them is designed specifically to fight the swarm. We have weapons your scientists have never imagined. We have soldiers trained for the worst combat conditions possible. Then you will help us. Velthus stood, his voice trembling. You will fight with us. Park was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was cold. 18 months ago, you could have welcomed us. You could have given us a seat at your table. Instead, you tried to condemn us to isolation and death. He walked closer to Velthus until they were face to face. I should refuse. I should watch as the swarm consumes everything and feel satisfied that you got what you deserved. Velthos said nothing. There was nothing to say, but I will not do that. Park's expression softened slightly. Because humans are not like you. We do not throw away potential allies. We do not abandon people to die, even people who have wronged us. He extended his hand in the human gesture of agreement. We will help you. We will save your galaxy. But you will give us full membership in the council. Equal standing. Equal respect. Velthus took the human's small, strange hand in two of his own. Agreed. To all of it? Good. Park turned to Captain Yoon. Begin fleet mobilization. We leave in 48 hours. As the aliens were escorted out, Velthos looked back at the human admiral. Why? He asked, after everything we did, why would you help us? Park met his eyes. Because that is who we are. We fight for survival ours and everyone else's. It is the only way to truly win. 48 hours later, the largest human fleet in history launched into the stars. And the swarm, for the first time in 3 million years, would learn what it meant to face a species that refused to die. The Allied fleet gathered at the Helix Nebula. What remained of the Council's forces, perhaps 2,000 ships from a dozen species, joined with Earth's 3,000 warships. Together, they formed the last hope for the galaxy. If they failed here, there would be nothing left to stop the swarm. Fleet Admiral Kang Tai-Wu stood on the bridge of the Defiance, the largest ship humanity had ever built. He was a quiet man with calm eyes and hands that never shook. He had fought in wars on 3 continents before joining the space fleet. He knew death like an old friend, and he knew how to bring it to his enemies. The swarm will arrive in 6 hours, reported Vice Admiral Choi Murray from her position at the tactical display. She was younger than Kang, but just as experienced. They had served together for 15 years. The alien commanders want to form a defensive line around the nebula. Kang shook his head. No defensive lines. Told them you would say that. They do not understand. Then I will explain. Called a meeting of all fleet commanders. The alien admirals appeared as holograms on the Defiance's bridge, their strange faces showing confusion and fear. They had seen the swarm destroy everything. They expected to die today. They just wanted to die with some dignity. Admiral Kang, said the Valith commander, a creature with 6 eyes and skin like blue metal. We have analyzed the swarm's patterns. A defensive formation gives us the best chance of— You have already tried defensive formations, Kang interrupted. His voice was polite but firm. At Nexus Prime, you lost 8,000 ships. The alien fell silent. Humans do not fight defensively, Kang continued. We never have. Our entire history is a story of attacking, advancing, taking ground. When we are pushed back, we push forward twice as hard. This is not strategy. This is who we are. But the swarm is too large, protested another commander. We cannot attack something that size. Kang smiled slightly. It was not a comforting smile. Watch us. He laid out the battle plan. It was unlike anything the aliens had ever seen. There would be no lines, no positions to hold, no organized retreat points. Instead, the human fleet would do something that seemed like madness. They would attack directly into the heart of the swarm. You cannot be serious, said the Valith commander. That is suicide. It is war, Kong replied. Our way of war. 6 hours later, the swarm arrived. They came like a cloud of darkness, so thick that the stars disappeared behind them. Billions of creatures, from small ones the size of insects, to massive beasts larger than battleships. In the center of the mass, barely visible, was the command organism, a creature the size of a small moon that directed the entire swarm with its thoughts. The alien ships immediately began forming defensive positions, just as their instincts told them to. They grouped together, pointed their weapons outward, prepared to sell their lives as dearly as possible. The human fleet did not join them. All ships, Kong said calmly into the fleet-wide channel. Attack Formation Delta. Target the center mass. Do not stop for anything. 3,000 human warships surged forward like a spear aimed at the heart of the enemy. They accelerated to speeds that made the alien commanders gasp. Their engines burned so hot that they glowed like small suns. The swarm reacted with confusion. Every prey they had ever faced had tried to run, or hide, or defend. None had ever charged toward them. For a critical moment, the hive mind hesitated, trying to understand what was happening. That moment was all the humans needed. The first wave of ships, at the outer edge of the swarm like a hammer hitting glass. Weapons that the Council had banned for millennium antimatter torpedoes. Gravity bombs, focused singularity weapons tore through the creatures by the thousands. The darkness lit up with explosions. Captain Lee Soo-jin commanded the destroyer Indomitable. One of the smaller ships in the human fleet, she was at the front of the attack, her vessel punching through the swarm like a needle through fabric. Creatures slammed against her shields, trying to break through. Her weapons crews fired without stopping, filling the space around them with death. Captain, we are losing hull integrity on decks 3 through 7, her first officer reported. Seal those decks and keep firing, Soo-jin replied. There are crew members still. I said keep firing. Her voice was hard as steel. They know the mission. We all do. The Indomitable drove deeper into the swarm. All around them, human ships were doing the same, some surviving. Many dying, but all of them still moving forward. No retreats. No hesitation. Just attacked Vice Admiral Choi Murray coordinated the assault from the Defiance, watching thousands of data points at once. She saw ships explode. She saw friends die. But she did not stop. She could not stop. Every second they kept fighting was a second the aliens had to see how humans waged war, and they were watching. The surviving Council ships had stopped trying to defend themselves. They were staring at the battle in disbelief. The humans were dying. Nearly a quarter of their fleet was already gone, but they were not just dying. They were killing. They were hurting the swarm in ways no one had thought possible. They are insane, whispered the Valeth commander. No, said Counselor Velthus, who had insisted on being present for the battle. They are human. Admiral Kong's voice came over all channels, calm as always, even as the Defiance shook from impacts and explosions. All ships, Phase 2. Target the command organism. Everything you have. The remaining human vessels converged on the center of the swarm. The command organism saw them coming and tried to pull back. But it was too slow. It had grown too large, too confident. It had never needed to run before Captain Soo-jin saw her chance. The Indomitable was damaged, burning, barely holding together. Half her crew was dead. But her engines still worked. Her weapons still fired. All hands, this is the captain. Her voice was steady. It has been an honor. She aimed her ship directly at the command organism and pushed the engines to maximum. The Indomitable screamed forward, trailing fire and debris. Swarm creatures threw themselves in her path, though she smashed through them. The ship hit the command organism at near light speed. The impact released energy equivalent to a small nuclear explosion. The command organism shuddered, a wound torn in its side larger than a city. The swarm screamed. Not with sound, but with thought, a psychic cry of pain that every telepathic species in the fleet felt. For the first time in 3 million years, the swarm felt fear. It is wounded, Kong said, his voice finally showing a hint of emotion. Finish it. Every surviving ship focused fire on the command organism. The creature tried to heal itself, tried to retreat, but the humans would not let it. They chased it, surrounded it, tore it apart piece by piece. When it finally died, the swarm went mad. Without the command organism to direct them, the creatures turned on each other, scattered in random directions, or simply stopped moving. The threat was not over. A new queen would eventually rise from the survivors, but for now, the battle was won. Admiral Kong looked at the damage reports. Of 3,000 human ships, only 1,800 remained. Half his fleet was gone. But they had done what the entire galaxy could not. They had beaten the swarm. He opened a channel to the Allied fleet. "This is Admiral Kang. The enemy is in retreat. This is how humans fight. Not for territory. Not for resources. For survival, and we do not lose." The alien commanders had no words. They had just witnessed something that their histories would remember forever. They had seen a species that did not know how to surrender, and for the first time since the swarm awakened, they believed they might actually survive. The war lasted 3 more years. 3 years of blood and fire and death. 3 years of battles across 1,000 star systems. 3 years of watching friends die and worlds burn. But slowly, system by system, the swarm was pushed back. After the Battle of Helix Nebula, everything changed. The alien species no longer saw humans as dangerous primitives to be contained. They saw them as allies. As leaders, as the only reason any of them were still alive, human admirals took command of combined fleets. Human scientists shared weapons technology. Human soldiers trained alien warriors in the art of attack, of aggression, of never giving up. Not everyone survived. Entire species were wiped out before help could arrive. The Valve Federation lost 90% of their population. The cloud beings who had spoken against Earth in the Council were reduced to a few thousand individuals. The galaxy that emerged from the war was scarred, wounded, changed forever, but it was alive. And that was because of humanity. The final battle took place at the galactic core itself, deep in the swirling chaos of ancient stars and radiation. The swarm had gathered around their new queen, a massive organic structure the size of a small moon. If she lived, the swarm would rebuild. If she died, the war would end. General Bae Young-ho led the ground assault. 2 million soldiers, human and alien alike, landed on the surface of the Queen's structure to destroy it from within. The surface was nightmare made real. Organic towers reaching toward the sky. Rivers of something that might have been blood. Creatures emerging from every shadow, every crack, every hole. Young-ho was a simple man from a farming family. He had joined the military because it was the only way to pay for his education. Now he commanded the largest ground force in human history. Life was strange that way. All units advanced toward the central chamber. He ordered through his helmet radio. "The Queen is there. We kill her, we end this." Lieutenant Han Yuna moved alongside him, coordinating communications between the scattered units. She was young, only 25, but she had fought in more battles than soldiers twice her age. Her face was calm, even as creatures attacked from all directions. "General, we are losing units on the Eastern Front," she reported. "The swarm is concentrating there. Let's pull back and regroup. Have the Kalhari reinforcements fill the gap?" "The Kalhari are down to 40% strength." Young-ho gritted his teeth. "Then they will have to be enough. We cannot stop." They fought for 3 days. 3 days without sleep. 3 days of constant combat. Soldiers died by the thousands, but more kept coming. They pushed through tunnels filled with creatures. They climbed over walls made of living tissue. They destroyed everything in their path. On the 3rd day, they reached the central chamber. The Queen was there. She was horrible, a massive creature with no clear shape, constantly shifting and changing. Eyes appeared and disappeared across her surface. Mouths opened and closed, speaking in languages that had been dead for millions of years. And from her body, new swarm creatures were being born every second. "We need to destroy her completely," Young-ho said. "Conventional weapons will not be enough. Sergeant Imyayuk stepped forward. He was carrying something on his back, a device that glowed with strange energy. A singularity bomb. The most powerful weapon humanity had ever created. It would create a small black hole that would consume everything within 10 kilometers. "I will do it," Yayuk said. His voice was calm. Young-ho looked at him. They had served together for 8 years. Yayuk had saved his life twice. Now he was volunteering to die. "There has to be another way," Young-ho said. "There is not." Yayuk smiled. It was a peaceful smile. The smile of a man who had made his peace with death. "The bomb needs to be detonated inside her body. That means someone has to carry it in." Lieutenant Han's voice cracked. "Yayuk, tell my mother I did something important." He looked at them one last time. "Tell her I saved the galaxy." Before anyone could stop him, he ran. He charged directly at the Queen, firing his weapon, cutting a path through the creatures that tried to stop him. The Queen saw him coming and screamed with 1,000 mouths, but it was too late. Yayuk reached her body and kept going. He pushed into her flesh, forcing his way through layers of organic matter, heading for the center. The last thing anyone heard from him was a single word. Now. Singularity bomb detonated. For a moment, a small sun appeared where the Queen had been. Then the sun collapsed, drawing everything toward it. The Queen, the walls of the chamber, even the light itself. The black hole consumed them all. And then just as quickly it was gone, taking the heart of the swarm with it. The remaining swarm creatures went silent. Without the Queen, they had no purpose. They stopped fighting. They stopped moving. They simply died. The war was over. 1 year later, the Galactic Council gathered once more. This time, it was not in a crystal chamber on a distant station. It was on Earth, in a great hall, built specifically for this moment. Representatives from every surviving species were there, many fewer than before the war, but alive. All alive because of humanity. Admiral Park Do-yoon, now simply called Elder Park. His fighting days behind him, walked to the center of the hall. He moved slowly, his body worn by age and stress, but his eyes were still sharp. Still dangerous? Still human. Counselor Velthus stood to meet him. The alien, who had once voted to imprison humanity, now bowed before their representative. 18 years ago, Velthus said, his voice carrying through the silent hall, this council voted to contain humanity because we feared them. We were right to fear them. He paused. But we were fools to make them our enemy. Today, we owe our existence to the species we tried to destroy. He stepped aside, gesturing to an empty chair at the center of the council circle. The most important seat, the seat of leadership. Earth has earned this place, Velthus continued. Humanity has earned this place. Please, Elder Park, take your seat. Park looked at the chair. Then he looked around the hall at the gathered species. Many of them still feared humans. He could see it in their eyes. But more of them looked at him with gratitude. With respect, with hope, he sat down. The hall erupted in applause. Creatures that had once wanted humanity caged now cheered for them. Species that had lost everything in the war celebrated because at least they were still alive to rebuild. When the noise finally died down, Park raised his hand and spoke. 18 years ago, you asked what makes humans dangerous? It is not our weapons. It is not our numbers. It is not our willingness to fight. He paused, letting his words settle. It is this. We do not accept extinction. We do not surrender to the dark. When the universe itself tries to kill us, we fight back. We adapt. We survive. And we help others survive too. He looked at Velthos. At the Kelhari, who had tried to imprison humanity, but now sat beside them as allies. You voted against Earth once. That vote was fatal for the swarm. Remember that. Not as a threat, but as a promise. Humanity will always fight for survival. Yours and ours. That is who we are. That is who we will always be. He sat back in his chair, suddenly looking very tired, but also satisfied. At peace. Now, he said, a small smile crossing his face. Let us begin building a better galaxy together, outside the Great Hall. The sun was setting over a rebuilt Earth. Children played in the streets, not knowing or caring about the war their parents had fought. Ships from 100 species orbited above, bringing trade and knowledge and hope. The galaxy had changed forever. Humanity had joined the stars, and nothing would ever be the same. The war was over. The future was beginning. And for the first time in its history, the Galactic Council had a species at its heart that knew how to do the impossible, a species that refused to die.